I see it in his eyes every time we are in the same room. A look that is both terrifying and comforting. And it makes me question everything I have built over the last 5 years. My name is Sophie, and for a long time, I believed that I was the luckiest woman in the world. I live in a beautiful house with a large garden. I do not have to worry about money. And I am married to a man who everyone says is a catch. But recently, a quiet, heavy realization has settled in my heart, like dust settling on an old bookshelf. I think I married the wrong brother. It started on a Tuesday evening, which is usually a very ordinary time of the week. My husband, Mark, was sitting at the dining table, but he was not really there. His body was present, occupying the chair, but his mind was traveling through emails, spreadsheets, and business calls. He was tapping furiously on his phone, his eyebrows pulled together in a knot of stress. I had cooked his favorite meal, roast chicken with rosemary and garlic potatoes. But the food was getting cold on his plate. "Mark," I said softly, trying not to sound like I was complaining. "The chicken is going to be dry if you don't eat it soon." He didn't look up. He just raised a hand, a gesture that meant wait a minute, and continued typing. "Just 1 second, Sophie. I have to fire this supplier. They messed up the order again." I sighed and looked down at my own plate. I felt a familiar loneliness wash over me. It is a strange thing to feel lonely when you are sitting right next to someone. It is a specific kind of coldness that a sweater cannot fix. Just then, the doorbell rang. Mark didn't move, so I stood up and walked to the front door. When I opened it, I saw Daniel standing there. Daniel is Mark's younger brother. He looks like Mark, but the feeling you get from him is completely different. Where Mark is loud, energetic, and sharp, Daniel is soft, steady, and calm. Mark is like a summer storm. Daniel is like a quiet river. "Hi, Sophie," Daniel said, offering me a small, shy smile. He was holding a paper bag in his hands. "I'm sorry to intrude. I know it's dinner time." "It's fine, Daniel," I said, stepping aside to let him in. Mark is working while eating. "Come in. Have you had dinner?" "I don't want to disturb you," he said, wiping his shoes on the mat carefully. He was always so careful, always worried about causing inconvenience to others. "You are saving me from silence," I admitted, perhaps a little too honestly. "Please, sit down." We walked into the dining room. Mark finally looked up, but only for a second. "Hey, Dan, grab a plate if you want. I need 10 more minutes on this." Then his head went back down to the screen. Daniel looked at me, and I saw that look again. It wasn't pity. Pity is when someone looks down on you. This was empathy. He understood. He saw the cold food, the silence, and the tiredness in my posture. "I brought the books you asked for," Daniel said, placing the paper bag on the table gently. My eyes lit up. "You found them?" "Yes," he said, his voice becoming warmer. "I went to that old bookstore downtown. the one with the dusty windows. I found the collection of poetry by Mary Oliver and that gardening guide from the 1950s you were talking about last month. I felt a sudden rush of emotion. I had mentioned those books in passing during a family barbecue 4 weeks ago. Mark had been talking about the stock market with his father, and I had been sitting on the porch steps. Daniel had come to sit next to me, and we had talked about how much I missed reading real books, how I wanted to start a flower garden, but didn't know where to begin. Mark had never bought me a book in 5 years. He usually bought me expensive jewelry that I was too afraid to wear. "Thank you, Daniel," I said, and my voice trembled slightly. "I can't believe you remembered. I have a good memory for things that matter," he said simply. He sat across from me, and while Mark ignored us, we began to eat and talk. We didn't talk about business or money or the neighbors. We talked about the changing seasons. We talked about why the leaves turn gold in October. We discussed the best way to plant tulips so they survive the frost. As I spoke to him, I felt myself waking up. It was as if I had been asleep for years, just going through the motions of being a good wife. And suddenly, someone was actually listening to me. Not just hearing my voice, but understanding the words. I looked at Mark, who was now talking loudly on the phone, pacing around the room. He was handsome, successful, and ambitious. On paper, he was perfect. But looking at Daniel, watching the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when I made a joke, I felt a dangerous thought creeping into my mind. I chose the man who impressed the world, but I ignored the man who understood my soul. To understand how I ended up here, I have to take you back 5 years. I was 24 years old, and I was impulsive. I had just finished university, and I was working as a junior assistant at a marketing firm. I met Mark at a conference. He was the keynote speaker. He was charismatic, funny, and confident. When he walked into a room, the energy changed. Everyone wanted to be near him. When he approached me at the after party, I felt like I had been chosen by a celebrity. He swept me off my feet. Our courtship was fast and furious. Expensive dinners, surprise trips to Paris, huge bouquets of red roses delivered to my office. It was intoxicating. I felt special. I met Daniel a few months later. I remember the day clearly. Mark took me to his parents' house for lunch. It was a loud, chaotic family gathering. Everyone was shouting over each other, laughing, and telling stories. Mark was in the center of it all, telling a story about a client he had won over. I had stepped into the kitchen to get a glass of water because the noise was overwhelming me. I have always been a bit introverted. I need quiet moments to recharge my battery. Daniel was in the kitchen, washing dishes. He was the only one helping his mother. "Hello," he had said, turning off the tap. "You must be Sophie." "Yes," I smiled. "And you're the brother, Daniel." "That's me," he said. He dried his hands on a towel. "It's a bit loud out there, isn't it?" Just a little, I confessed. If you need a break, the garden is nice right now. The hydrangeas are blooming. I didn't think much of him then. I thought he was nice, but boring. He didn't have Mark's sparkle. He was just the quiet brother who washed the dishes. I was so blinded by the bright light of Mark's personality that I didn't appreciate the gentle warmth of Daniel's kindness. I married Mark 6 months later. It was the wedding of the century. Hundreds of guests, a live band, a 5-tier cake. I remember standing at the altar, holding Mark's hand. He was smiling at the crowd, waving to his friends. I looked over at the best man, Daniel. He wasn't looking at the crowd. He was looking at me. And in that moment, just for a split second, I saw a flash of sadness in his eyes. It was gone so quickly that I thought I imagined it. Now, sitting in my dining room 5 years later, eating cold roast chicken while my husband ignored me, I realized I hadn't imagined it at all. A few weeks after the dinner with the books, the heavy feeling in my heart grew stronger. It was the weekend, and Mark had promised that we would go hiking. I had been looking forward to it all week. I had bought new hiking boots and packed a picnic basket with sandwiches and fruit. I wanted to reconnect with him. I wanted to find the fun, adventurous couple we used to be. Saturday morning arrived. The sun was shining through the curtains, promising a beautiful day. I ran downstairs, excited. Mark was in the kitchen, dressed in his suit. My heart sank. "Mark, why are you wearing a suit?" He looked at me with a guilty expression. "Sophie, I am so sorry. An emergency came up at the firm. The merger is in trouble. I have to go to the office immediately." "But you promised," I said, feeling tears prick the corners of my eyes. "We haven't spent a day together in months." "I know, honey, I know. But this is millions of dollars on the line. I can't just ignore it. I'll make it up to you. I promise." He kissed me on the cheek, a quick, dry kiss, and grabbed his car keys. "Why don't you go anyway? Enjoy the fresh air." And then he was gone. The front door slammed shut, and the silence of the big house rushed back in to swallow me. I stood in the kitchen for a long time, looking at the picnic basket. I felt foolish. I felt unimportant. I decided I would not stay home and cry. I was angry. So I grabbed the basket, put on my boots, and got into my car. I drove to the nature reserve about 30 minutes away. When I arrived, the parking lot was nearly full, but I found a spot. I started walking up the trail alone. The nature was beautiful. The trees were tall and green, and the birds were singing. But everything looked gray to me because of my mood. I had been walking for about 20 minutes when I heard a familiar voice. "Sophie." I turned around. Daniel was walking up the path behind me. He was wearing a simple t-shirt and jeans, and he had a camera around his neck. He looked surprised to see me. "Daniel," I said, wiping a stray tear from my cheek quickly, hoping he wouldn't notice. "What are you doing here?" "I come here every Saturday to take photos," he explained. He looked at me closely. He noticed everything. "Are you okay? You look upset." "I'm fine," I lied. Then I sighed. "Actually, no, I'm not fine. Mark was supposed to come with me, but he went to work. Again." Daniel's face fell. He looked angry for a moment, but he controlled it. "I see. I'm sorry, Sophie. He doesn't realize what he's missing. I feel stupid walking alone with a picnic basket for two," I said, with a bitter laugh. "Well," Daniel said, shifting his camera, "I am alone too, and I am quite hungry. Would you mind some company? I promise I won't talk about the stock market." I smiled. It was the first real smile I had felt all day. "I would love that." We found a quiet spot by the lake. We spread out the blanket and ate the sandwiches I had made. It was effortless. With Mark, I always felt I had to be on. I had to look perfect, say the right things, be the supportive wife. With Daniel, I could just be Sophie. "I didn't know you were a photographer," I said, pointing to his camera. "It's just a hobby," he said modestly. "I like capturing small moments, things people usually ignore." "Show me," I asked. He hesitated, then handed me the camera. I scrolled through the photos. They were breathtaking. There were close-ups of dewdrops on a spiderweb, a candid shot of an old couple holding hands on a bench, a picture of a stray cat sleeping in a patch of sunlight. "These are amazing, Daniel," I said, looking up at him. "You have such a beautiful way of seeing the world. I think the world is beautiful if you slow down enough to look at it," he said softly. His eyes locked with mine. "Most people are running too fast. They miss the best parts." We sat in silence for a moment. The wind rustled the leaves around us. "Do you remember the day you met Mark?" Daniel asked suddenly. "Yes," I said, "at the conference." "No, I mean, do you remember meeting me?" "In the kitchen," I nodded. "You were washing dishes." Daniel looked down at his hands. "I remember that day very clearly. I remember thinking that Mark was the luckiest man alive. I remember watching you talk to him and thinking." He stopped. "Thinking what?" I whispered. "Thinking that I wished I was the one who had given the speech that day. So that maybe you would have noticed me first." My heart hammered against my ribs. It was a confession, but it was gentle. He wasn't trying to steal me. He was just stating a fact, a painful truth he had carried for 5 years. "Daniel," I said, my voice shaking. I shouldn't have said that," he said quickly, pulling back. "I'm sorry. I respect Mark. He is my brother. And you are his wife. I would never do anything to jeopardize that." "I know," I said. "I know you wouldn't." But the words hung in the air between us. "Maybe you would have noticed me first." The truth was, I was noticing him now. I was noticing the way he listened. I was noticing his kindness. I was noticing that while Mark bought me diamonds, Daniel knew which books I wanted to read. Mark wanted a trophy wife to show off. Daniel wanted a partner to share life with. We packed up the picnic in silence, but it was a comfortable silence. He walked me back to my car. "Thank you for saving my day," I said. Anytime, Sophie, he replied. Please, don't be too hard on Mark. He loves you in his own way. He just has a different language. I know, I said. But I am starting to think that I don't speak that language anymore. I drove home with my mind spinning. I felt guilty. I hadn't done anything wrong physically. I hadn't kissed him. I hadn't held his hand in a romantic way. But emotionally, I felt like I had crossed a line. I had shared a piece of my heart with Daniel that Mark hadn't touched in years. When I got home, Mark was already there. He was sitting on the sofa, watching TV. Hey, he said, not looking away from the screen. How was the hike? It was fine, I said. I ran into Daniel. Mark laughed. Of course you did. That guy has no life. He's always wandering around looking at trees. Did he bore you to death? I felt a flash of anger hot in my chest. No, Mark. He didn't bore me. We had a lovely lunch. He actually listened to me. Mark turned his head, surprised by my tone. Whoa, relax, Sophie. I was just joking. I'm glad you had company. Look, I made it up to you. I booked us a table at that fancy Italian place for tonight. 8:00 p.m. He thought a fancy dinner fixed everything. He thought money was a bandage for emotional wounds. I don't want to go to the Italian place, I said firmly. Mark looked confused. What? Why? It's your favorite. It's your favorite, Mark, I corrected him. My favorite is the little Thai place on the corner where we can actually hear each other talk. He looked at me as if I were speaking a foreign language. Okay, we can go to the Thai place if you want. I just thought you deserved the best. I don't want the best, I said, my voice cracking. I just want you. He stood up and hugged me. It was a warm hug, familiar. I'm here, Sophie. I'm right here. I know I've been busy, but it's all for us. For our future. I hugged him back, but I felt a terrible emptiness. He was here, but he wasn't. He was building a future, but he was forgetting to live in the present. The weeks passed, and the situation became more difficult. I found myself looking for excuses to see Daniel. I would call him to ask for advice about the garden. I would invite him over for coffee when I knew Mark would be late. It wasn't an affair. It was a friendship that was dangerously deep. We were walking on a tightrope. One rainy afternoon, about 2 months after the hiking trip, I went to Daniel's apartment. I told myself I was dropping off some leftovers from a dinner party. But deep down, I knew I just wanted to see him. His apartment was small but cozy. It was filled with books, plants, and his photographs. It smelled of old paper and coffee. It felt like home in a way my own massive house never did. He made tea, and we sat by the window, watching the rain fall against the glass. Sophie, he said after a while. He looked serious. We need to talk. About what? I asked, though I knew. About this, he gestured between us. I can't keep doing this. It's tearing me apart. My heart stopped. What do you mean? I mean that I love you, he said. He didn't say it dramatically. He said it quietly, like a fact he couldn't change. I have loved you since the day I met you in the kitchen. I tried to bury it. I tried to be just the brother-in-law. But every time you come here, every time you look at me with those sad eyes, it kills me. Because I know I could make you happy. And I know I can't have you. I put my teacup down, my hands trembling. Daniel, I'm not asking you to leave him, he continued, looking out the window. Mark is my brother. If you leave him, it has to be because you want to, not because of me. I won't be the reason a family is destroyed. I think I started, my voice barely a whisper. I think I married the wrong one. He turned to look at me, his eyes full of pain. Maybe. Or maybe you married the man you needed then. But people change, Sophie. You've grown. Mark hasn't. Tears rolled down my cheeks. What do I do? You have to decide what kind of life you want, Daniel said. Do you want the big house and the man who conquers the world? Or do you want something else? I want to be seen, I said. I want to be understood. Then tell him, Daniel said. Give him a chance to be that man. You owe him that. And if he can't, he trailed off. And if he can't, then you have to save yourself. I left Daniel's apartment that day with a heavy heart, but a clear mind. He was right. I couldn't use Daniel as an escape. I had to face my marriage. I had to face Mark. That evening, I waited for Mark to come home. When he walked in, throwing his keys on the table and talking about his day, I didn't just nod and smile. Mark, turn off the TV, I said. He looked surprised. What? The game is on. Turn it off, please. We need to talk. Something in my voice made him listen. He clicked the remote, and the room went silent. He sat down, looking worried. Is everything okay? Is it your parents? No, I said, it's us. I told him everything. Not about Daniel's confession. That was a secret I would keep to protect their brotherhood, but about my feelings. I told him how lonely I was. I told him that his money didn't make me happy. I told him that I felt like a ghost in my own life. I feel like you don't know me anymore, I said, crying. I feel like I'm just an accessory to your successful life. Mark sat there, stunned. For the first time in 5 years, he was speechless. He looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw fear in his eyes. I didn't know, he stammered. I thought you were happy. I work so hard for us, Sophie. Everything I do is for you. But I don't need things, I shouted, the frustration finally exploding. I need you. I need you to know what books I read. I need you to walk in the woods with me. I need you to look at me and see me, not just your wife. Mark put his head in his hands. We talked for hours. There was shouting, there was crying, and there was silence. In the end, he made a promise. I will try, he said. I will cut back on work. We can go to counseling. I don't want to lose you, Sophie. I looked at him. I saw the sincerity in his eyes. He was a good man. He wasn't a villain. He was just a man who had been taught that love equals providing. Okay, I said quietly. We can try. It has been 6 months since that conversation. Life is better. Mark is trying. We go to therapy every Thursday. He comes home earlier. We go for walks. He is learning to listen. It is not perfect. He still checks his phone too much, and he still falls asleep when I talk about poetry. But he is trying. And Daniel moved to another city a month ago. He got a job at a gallery in London. The day he left, he came to say goodbye. Mark was at work, so it was just us. I think this is best, Daniel said, standing by his car. I will miss you, I said. And I meant it more than anything I had ever said. I will miss you too, he said. He hesitated, then leaned in and kissed me on the forehead. It was a kiss of goodbye, a kiss of what could have been. Be happy, Sophie. That's all I ever wanted. Thank you, I whispered, for waking me up. I watched him drive away until his car was just a speck in the distance. So did I marry the wrong brother? Sometimes, late at night, when Mark is snoring beside me and the house is quiet, I think about the answer. I think I did marry the wrong brother. My soul is made of the same material as Daniel's. We are both quiet rivers. Mark and I are different elements. But life is not a fairy tale. You cannot simply hit undo on 5 years of marriage because you found someone who understands your favorite poems. Marriage is a commitment. It is work. However, Daniel gave me a gift. He showed me that I deserve to be seen. He showed me that I am interesting and worthy of attention. He forced me to demand more from my husband, and more importantly, more from myself. I am no longer the passive wife waiting for scraps of attention. I have started my garden. I have joined a book club. I am writing my own stories. I may have married the wrong brother, but because of him, I finally found the right version of myself. And for now, that is enough. The love I have with Mark is different. It is built on history and effort, but it is real. And the love I have for Daniel, that is a beautiful, sad song that I will keep tucked away in a secret corner of my heart. A reminder that I am capable of being deeply, truly understood. I see it in his eyes, even now in my memory. And that memory helps me survive the storms.